Welcome back to the Djellab YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, it is a Friday, so welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for your support over on Spotify, guys. It's been huge. I think we made it into the top 20 for the sports podcast on our first week of being there. So thank you so much for that support. As you can see, joining me today, Benjamin Bowman. How are you doing?
Very good, thanks, mate. I'm still getting over the Ipswich defeat on Sunday.
Yes.
But you know what? As you get older, you kind of just put these results behind you a little bit more.
You do, slightly. You say that, though. I'm pretty sure at the full-time whistle, you must have been raging.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But we've got some really good international fixtures to look forward to. I'm sure absolutely everybody cares about.
Well, we won't be talking about them this week. As you can see, there is two of us this week. Henry had a big interview that he couldn't be here, unfortunately, because of it. Pat's on holiday. But then I had invited a certain Joe Tomlinson to be on the podcast, and unfortunately, he was ill last night. So it's me and you, matey. And as people can see by the title of the video and podcast, we are going to be talking about our predictions and what we made, and then we're going to be updating them as well. And it's crazy to sit here probably 2 months later since the season started, or 3 months since the season started, and a couple of them aren't looking very good.
No.
A couple of them aren't looking very good. No. So that's how it's going to work. We're going to go through them. You guys might have watched the video earlier this year with Pat and Henry. But let's get straight into it then, mate. We'll talk about winners and stuff like that a little bit later. I want to chat first about the manager sack race. Do you know, did you predict who was going to get sacked first? Did you do a TikTok on that at all?
I did it in my overall Premier League predictions video. And let's just say I got it massively wrong. But then again, I think who I'm going to say, and I think who you might say as well, I don't think anybody predicted them to kind of have this sort of start. So yeah, as you can probably guess, I went for Nuno as the first manager to be sacked. With Forest, it's like, you can never really tell what level of stability they're going to have. Yeah. And I just felt like with Nuno's second season, he'd done a decent job to keep them up. The last season when he came in, got them playing, got them in a position where they could just keep their head above water towards the end of the season. But I just didn't see it clicking in the second year. Like I said, I think it probably didn't necessarily reflect on his ability as a manager. It was more about the kind of lack of stability that Forest have, and maybe their owners being kind of willing to pull the trigger, especially after they had like a quite decent summer as well. But he's done an amazing job. He's done an amazing job for them. So all kind of credit where credit is due, and I think he's surprised a lot of people.
Mate, you could definitely say that again. That's for sure. I think as I said, sack race for me was Nuno. I also had Nottingham Forest in my relegation zone. I don't know if you quite had them there.
I didn't, not quite, but I think they were close.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny this actually now, like just looking back within a few months, and of course, like we've also got to say, Forest are way above anybody's expectations, I think, if you're being honest. Even if you ask a truly like die-hard Forest fan, they might not have admitted they'd go quite as high as they have so far this season.
Yeah.
And it's interesting looking back on it because Nuno said during his first season, or the end of the first season, give me my pre-season and wait and see what this Forest side will be like. Yeah. And they look really good. They look like they've adapted really well. I think it's funny this because during his tenure last season, when he took over from Cooper, there was a large period where Forest fans did not like him. No. It wasn't quite working out. And it very much was something where they did keep their head above the water, as you mentioned. But what he's done this season is he's got obviously Milinkovic in, who's been an incredible signing. Like I might get on about him a little bit later. But like the attack is still kind of what he had last season. Yeah. Chris Wood under him has been phenomenal. His goal record under Nuno is outrageous. Like he's getting the best out of Callum Hudson-Odoi. Whether it's Alanga on the right wing or who's the Portuguese guy they brought in, Jota, who's done a very good job as well. Like there's arguments I've seen that some Forest fans say that Gibbs White is probably the player that hasn't maybe quite stepped up to the plate so far.
Well, this is the thing. I think it was when Gibbs White got sent off in that game against Brighton. They had Elliot Anderson then came into that position, and I think it was the game they beat Palace, that Monday night game. He was absolutely excellent, and he was obviously a brilliant bit of business. That deal kind of had its dodgy elements. PSR kind of deal, wasn't it? But he's been great. Gibbs White is always a player that's kind of, because he's always linked with Spurs, Arsenal, that kind of side. And I don't know how much I see that, and I actually think that he's a very good player. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's as influential as someone like Hudson-Odoi, or even maybe not Elanga, but Hudson-Odoi kind of facilitates their ability to be so dangerous on the counter-attack.
But I think that's because Nuno kind of that's what Nuno wants them to do, right? Like they want to be sitting slightly deeper, let them get them on the counter-attack, and it's almost like at times Gibbs White's job to get that ball out to the wing. Let Hudson-Odoi do the difficult bit and have a Chris Wood there to tap it home. And he's been injured slightly as well this season. It's weird to feel like we're actually criticising Forest when they've been they've been so good. But I think in terms of when you look back at when I first made that prediction about Nuno and Forest, you didn't quite know whether they were going to fix their set-piece issues, which was a huge issue for them last season. They have. Sales this summer, or since the summer, has been incredible for them in goal. Obviously had a couple of worldy games. Set piece wise, they've definitely got 10 times better. They're nowhere near as worse as they were last year. I remember making the statement that I just thought part of the issue was just due to height. Like they've got a little bit. They've got a little bit more physical now as well, even in the midfield. In Milinkovic joining that centre back, the centre backs. Ola Arne has been playing fantastically well. Everybody's kind of like taken their level up, and I think that's because Nuno has seen the squad that he's got in front of him and thought, you know what, let's like get the best way we can play is this counter-attacking, absorbing attacks and getting them on the break, a bit more defensive football.
That's exactly what he did at Wolves, though, wasn't it?
When exactly. This is the level, I think, for him. Like, for instance, when he was at Spurs, and you as a Spurs fan, you might be able to kind of comment a little bit more on this, it felt like square peg, round hole.
100%, yeah.
Not the right manager identity and fit for the way, like it's funny that with Spurs, more than most other teams, a lot of fans talk about like the identity, the way of like playing football, and if like the one thing that if Spurs aren't winning games or like going so far in competition, whatever, at least they're playing their good football. Yeah, because they got annoyed at that. It's like with Conte and Mourinho. When they weren't winning trophies, they were playing turgid football, so they didn't have that.
We're not getting the payoff of actually being successful.
And when Nuno was there, how was it quite for you guys then?
It was a really funny one with Nuno because he wasn't the guy that anybody really wanted. He was
like fifth in line or seventh,
even lower than that. Because we tried so hard for Conte. Couldn't get that done. And then it even got to a point where we were looking like we were going to appoint Gattuso.
Ten Hag was interviewed then as well, wasn't
he? Ten Hag was interviewed, and to be fair to Daniel Levy, I think the noises that came out about Ten Hag were about his charisma and about how
his English didn't quite
and he didn't. I don't think he took to him either. I don't think he was particularly convincing. But with Nuno, I think we all kind of rallied around Nuno a little bit at the start because I think we'd gone through this rigmarole of trying to appoint a manager, and I think we were kind of like, let's just give him a chance because he did well at Wolves. We don't think he's going to be the guy to get us back necessarily into the top four, but he's been dealt a bit of a rubbish hand in the sense that he wasn't the guy that anybody really wanted, and he was like one of the only managers left available. And he had a decent start at Tottenham, won the first 3 games, won the manager of the month. So hopefully the manager of the month curse doesn't come straight, because I think did he win it this month, I think?
Yes, he did. He won it month. Yeah, he won it for
so
month.
So that could be a bad time for Forest because he won the first 3 games 1-0 at Spurs, got manager of the month, and then it all went downhill from there. So good luck to you, that's all I'll say. But Nuno's I really like his character. He became a little bit frosty with the media and stuff at Spurs, but I think he was under so much pressure because it was just like
elements of Ange slightly at the moment.
Well, exactly.
With that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I really like Nuno. I'm glad that he's doing well. Will they be top half coming into the season? Potentially. But even if they're not, I think the big thing with Forest, and Forest fans will ride this wave happily at the moment, but as long as they're stable, because that's the thing that, they've been a Premier League club for 3 consecutive seasons now? Their third or fourth? I think it's third.
Something like that, yeah, something like that.
So they are, by proxy, they are kind of getting more stable, but it's always felt a little bit jittery with them. It's like, are they going to stay up? Are they just going to keep their head above water? And they've obviously done that for the first 2 seasons. Whereas now it's like, we've arrived. It's kind of a bit like someone like a Fulham, where it's like, obviously Fulham was so stable for such a long time, went down, and it was up, down, up, down, up, down, and now look what they've done. So I think it might be a similar thing with Forest, hopefully for them.
Henry mentioned this about Fulham being an element of once you become stable, what is the next step? Are you just happy? So he was saying that sometimes he'd watch Fulham games kind of thinking, well, what's the point almost here? We're not going down. Yeah. And we're not getting 10th or above.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I can understand that. And so having these teams, for instance, Brighton, is a team who, when they first came up, it was about being stable in the league, and then they were able to. I mean, Brighton's such an incredible case because they do so well in everything they do. But even Brentford, to a degree, have at times like kind of become stable. I think now are pushing at times. Like it's a weird one, Brentford, because I can't quite tell whether they're going to finish 8th or whether they're going to finish 14th. It's tough to tell, and it might be just quite tough, to be honest, for a lot of those places come the end of the season. Points wise, there might not be much between them. No. But yeah, I do think that's where maybe Forest have found themselves, and sometimes as well, it's like a little bit of luck, like a few things clicking together, like Elliot Anderson having the season that he is, and kind of finding himself in this team. Yeah. Ola Aina kind of taking it one, like I think Ola Aina somewhat. I keep bringing him up on videos, but I really do think he's like taken a step forward this season, become a lot more assured. Like they're saying this after they lost to Newcastle, but again, like it was a Newcastle side that played pretty well in the end, and they're starting to find their own feet.
Forest still took the lead in that game as well. It was just like Newcastle are a good side.
They've got a lot of assets. Forest as well. Like even coming off the bench. I mentioned it before, but I think Arioni's like a fantastic striker, and at times in the Premier League we've seen him perform really, really well.
Without him, they probably wouldn't have stayed up that second. Was it the first year or second year? First year. Like, he was crucial for them.
Yeah, because they at times, obviously, his injury issues have been a bit of an issue for them. But yeah, he's done incredibly well. Nuno at Nottingham Forest. So I hold my hands up. The sack race.
We're sorry, Nuno.
I got wrong. What was interesting in that video actually is we did mention before that we had all thought about Erik ten Hag. Yeah. And whether or not, because I think when we'd released the video, it had just been announced it'd been given a new 1-year deal. Yeah. A 1-year extension, I should say. And obviously, fast forward to where we are now, he was the first manager to be sacked. I'm not going to go too in depth on it, but it's nice to say, like, give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back there. We didn't submit that as the answer, but we definitely kind of it was almost like a maths question where you write down your workings out as well. But did you see Erik ten Hag being the first one to get sacked?
I thought he was probably, if it wasn't going to be Nuno, I probably would have said Ten Hag. I was a little bit surprised just because. One, the financial element of it as well. Like, it would have cost them a lot of money to get rid of him because of the fact that they had given him a new contract. It felt maybe almost like a bit of a pride thing as well with them. The fact that they had backed him after the FA Cup final. They had said, we're going to give it another year. I know that they were really poor at the start of the season. They were. And I know the table's so crazy that they're still only like... Yeah. What, 5 points off?
They're 2 wins away from jumping up the table.
And with Amorim coming in now, that could all easily change. So it's not been... I mean, the results they were obviously bad by Man United standards, but it was the performances, the eye test. Nothing had improved from last year. So it wasn't a massive surprise, but I was a bit shocked that they pulled the trigger this early because it felt like... I feel kind of sorry for United fans. I mean, I don't now because they've got a fantastic manager coming in, but it kind of felt like those first few months of the season were just a waste of time.
I think it was almost a thing of let's give Erik ten Hag like the final element here, and obviously they'd done that. It's come out that they'd spoken to Amorim before this as well. Yeah. In that summer, and there was a few different things of the clauses and the money it would take and all this kind of stuff, and in the end, it's probably cost them about the same, if not more, to do it. But I always find it interesting when people get sacked at this point. It's kind of when. It's kind of the make or break time because if you do it now, you at least give that manager enough time to, as you said, like they are 2 wins away from jumping up the table, and suddenly everyone goes, "Oh my god, what a decision it was to bring in Amorim because he's fixed it already." Whilst I agree that I think United have been worse, I do think they've been slightly unlucky in terms of like some of the chances. They've definitely been better than they were last year in terms of going forward under Erik ten Hag.
I'm not sure if they are now, but they definitely were. At a point in the season, like the biggest underperformers.
100%. They were missing like. I mean, the Diego Dalot, his last game against West Ham, missing that is just. I mean, it's definitely a difficult
in that game they had a very dodgy penalty go against them as well. So it's kind of been fine margins a little bit. I remember even the Liverpool game that they lost. Liverpool were full value for that. Xerxes missed 2 absolute sitters in that game, didn't he? So it's like,
It's funny how it works out sometimes, but actually in the long term, because this might affect my underperformer shout, which was Manchester United. Yeah. But it was a Manchester United side under Erik ten Hag. Yeah. Now that they've got the new managerial Ruben Amorim coming in, like I don't think he's going to like make them a title challenger or even arguably a top 4 challenger, but I do think he'll get them moving up that
There's
table.
definitely hope there for sure, 100%.
They need it. Okay, then let's move on to the overachievers. We've mentioned a little bit about Nottingham Forest. Again, they kind of came out of nowhere. They really have. I mentioned at the time Everton.
Right.
Who was your prediction during that time?
Well, I've kind of got 2.
Okay.
Because in my TikTok video, I actually said Newcastle. But then I remember when we did the video together, just as the season started, I think I said Brighton. I think Brighton. To be fair to
Pat yourself on the back, mate. That was good.
I mean, also to be fair, that was off the back of the first game of the season. I think that the first weekend had gone by that point, and they were amazing. Even though it was, I know Everton were your overachievers, but Brighton beating Everton isn't necessarily a massive shock on the first game. But the way they ripped through them, I was just like, this is incredibly impressive. And
the second half, especially, they were on
unbelievable. Like a Dingra. And then what they've kind of gone on to do since then, beating Spurs, beating Man City at the weekend as well. They've been incredibly impressive. I just thought that they were kind of able to. I'm trying to think if did they lose anyone big in the summer? I don't think.
They lost Billy Gilmore.
Yeah.
But he in times was in and out of the side.
Yeah.
It was nowhere
wasn't
near
like
as
a
bad as
Caicedo McAllister.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were kind of able to, again, talking about that stability. The recruitment was pretty smart. Again, bringing in someone like a Minter, who hasn't featured a load. He's been good, but
their recruitment in general was just mad. Like Ruta came in,
O'Reilly as well.
We've seen who's the Turk? He's actually injured now.
Kadioglu,
he's been amazing. Great.
And also they've got another. I didn't buy him this summer, but they've got another one in Belieber, haven't they? They've got another midfielder that's just like completely came on and changed that game on Saturday. But yeah, I'll stick with Brighton because it reflects on me better. But Newcastle, I think my logic at the start of the season was that, and it kind of that also influenced my underperformers, which we'll get onto. But no European football.
Yeah.
The only thing was with Newcastle, and I would have done this before the window shut. They had a terrible window at the end, didn't they? And I was kind of expecting them to maybe do more than they did with those last couple of weeks, because it would have been would have done this probably the week before the season started. So I would have expected them to do more in the time they had left. One big thing though for Newcastle was holding on to everybody. There was so much uncertainty about Gordon going to Liverpool. Isak always linked with a move away to Arsenal.
Bruno had been linked at times.
Yeah, I genuinely was convinced at one point that City were going to go in for Guimaraes.
Yeah.
City, it's just one of those things where I thought they'd
be mad to see if City did in the end. Like obviously with what's happened to Rodri, like it's slightly different players, but would have been very, very interesting depending now looking at it.
Tonali coming back like a new signing as well. They've just been. I don't think they've been bad, Newcastle. I genuinely thought they could push for 5th, maybe even 4th, because
they still can.
They definitely can. And again,
I don't think it's a bad shout.
No, I just think that there was, again, just because they were able to hold on to everybody, I was kind of just like, okay, no European football. That did make a difference last year. I think it burnt them out quite quickly with the squad that they had. And again, I think you've seen it in glimpses with Newcastle. They beat Arsenal. They were excellent in that game. And again, they're not the most exciting side that I think maybe they were in that first season that they got top 4 under Eddie Howe.
They were a difficult side as well. Like, they were blowing.
I think Arsenal saw that, didn't they? They were like, they sort of camp in that 5-4-1 when they want to defend. One of the midfielders tucks into the back 5, and then you've got Isak, who's one of the best hold-up strikers in the world, bringing in Gordon and Barnes into play when they want to fly forward. They're a nightmare to play against at times, and I'm very interested to see what they do for the rest of the season. I don't know if they'll be in that top 4 conversation, but again, Spurs are 10th. We're 2 or 3 points off a 3rd at the moment. So that just shows you how
so
crazy
tight
the table
around
is.
there at the moment.
So
like within the next by the end of the year, it really could. And I think Newcastle, it does seem like Newcastle are starting to find their feet a little bit. People are now coming back from injuries. Like I think the side, when fully fit, is like a Tino Livramento, Lewis Hall fullback combination of like when eventually he is fit, Botman kind of coming back into the side, a midfield partnership where you can see again, I mentioned Tonali on my video that went out on Wednesday, and I actually think I think people forget about, one, the money that was paid for him, and two, again, he's already been in and out of the side. Like he's not necessarily starting time to starting games.
He's been brilliant. Willock's been brilliant as well. He was great in that Arsenal game.
Exactly. And so but I do think that when there is Harvey Barnes at the bench has been incredible. I think you are starting to see this side kind of get back to their best. Because there were moments where people were kind of questioning, I think, at the start of the season, Eddie Howe's Newcastle.
Kind of hit their ceiling a little bit,
Yeah, and maybe, there was the England job talk about whether Eddie would go there and whatever. But I do think it's like not a bad shout. Like, it's something that at the end of the season, you could look back at that and think, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Brighton for now, just because it's
a little bit easier to do, I reckon.
If Newcastle start winning a few more games, I'm going to flip-flop, so don't worry about that.
No, not too bad to flip-flop. As for Everton, I think Everton has still been... Like, they've only won 2 games so far this season. I still do stand by my statement of them being unlucky at times this year. Like, you mentioned the Brighton game at the start of the season against Everton. And I remember watching that game and thinking, at half-time, Everton could have been 2-0 up.
Yeah.
And that's a completely... I know in the end it was 4-0, wasn't it, in the end, or 4-1 or something like that?
I think it was 3-0.
3-0?
They had a man sent off.
Can't remember. Yeah, they did. But I do remember thinking at half-time, like, Everton could have been 2-0 up here. And if Everton go in 2-0 up, it's a completely different game. I think they will start to find their feet a little bit more. They suffered at the start of the season with with conceding so many sloppy goals.
Yeah.
Like, they were really, really poor at it. And like last season, they were great in defence, but poor going forward. They actually seem to be half decent now going forward.
Yeah.
They just need to make sure that this defence, and it does look like it's definitely improved from those first 5-6 games or so in the last 5 games. And so they are currently sitting in 16th. But again, if they win, say 2 games, they could jump up to 10th. Yeah. If, say, everybody else was to lose or whatever. So, of course, it would change massively. But that's how tight it is between the tables at the moment. But again, this is an Everton side, which I think I said at the time, overperformance, like, for them to be considered like an overperformer or an overachiever, I'm not saying that they're going to finish in a European place. No. I'm just saying they might be really comfortably not relegated.
Stability, again, closer
to 10th. Yeah, closer to 10th than they are 17th.
Because if you offered Everton fans, because last season without the points deduction, they probably would have finished.
Yeah, they weren't too bad. Yeah, they weren't too bad.
And this season, if you offered that, because the big thing is the new stadium next year. Yeah. As long as they stay in the Premier League this year, I think that's all that matters for them. Again, it's a question of like the brand of football and all that kind of stuff as well. But they got a good point going into the international break at West Ham away. All the pressure was on West Ham in that game. Everton did their job. The thing is with Everton is, I was just looking at it now, their run coming up in December is horrific.
Ooh,
so they've got Brentford next after the international break at home.
Not easy.
Then they've got United away. They've got Wolves at home, which is massive.
Yeah,
in
huge game. That.
Then up until Boxing Day, they've got Liverpool at home, Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, City away. So, but then again, you have to play every team twice. It's one of those things. Isn't it? So
true.
It's just like,
it's going to happen.
Out of the way.
But also, I don't know whether this is just. Sometimes I feel like with Everton. Not that they prefer these games. I don't mean that, but I find sometimes they can find a little bit more success in games where they are like when they can just sit back, play on the counter.
Yeah.
They'll make those games difficult. Yeah. Like though I don't see them being say 5-0 thrashings or something like that.
No, I think the only games there that are like
tight affair.
I think the only games there that are like write-offs are like Arsenal away. You'd imagine that is pretty much a write-off. Liverpool at home. I mean, Liverpool have been excellent, but that's the last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. Like 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday. It just could be one of those ones where it's just like, I mean, they beat Liverpool at home last year, didn't they? When they were going for the title, or when Liverpool were going for the title. So you just don't know with Everton. And then after that, it kind of gets okay, sort of going into the new year. So I think they've been okay. And Jai's been excellent as well. It's kind of added a bit more of an X factor to their attack.
McNeil's been fantastic.
Yep.
I think they started the season fire in terms of scoring goals. They definitely slowed down a little bit more recently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know whether I would if I was changing, which is, as I said, this is an updated predictions for the rest of the season. Yeah, Brighton are probably my ones I give. But it's also like when during like the international competitions, someone goes like, Italy's an underdog. Yeah. Like, how the fuck can Italy be an underdog?
Yeah, it's Italy.
Like what's happening here?
Previous World Cup winners and Euros winners.
And so, like, I feel like kind of saying Brighton are going to be an underdog is maybe not the expectation. However, this is a Brighton side, if I think back to the start of the season, had this manager that no one quite knew about. And everyone was talking about his age. Like, they were saying about now De Zerbi's gone. Like, is House of Football going to change? And so, look, if Brighton finish in, like top 6 place, that is 100% an overachievement, especially for a new manager in his first season. a new manager who's kind of been in his first, is just still going through early stages of a career. It's an incredible achievement. I do have to say so. In terms of underperformers, I know I mentioned Manchester United. That was more about Erik ten Hag. They were my underperformers. Again, I think it slightly changes now that Ruben Amorim has come in. Yeah. I don't think... When we spoke about them being the underachievers, I remember it was at times where I was seeing articles saying United could finish in the top 4. And I was thinking, that is mental.
That's crazy.
Now, if we're being realistic, I think everyone understands that Manchester United might not finish. I think they could look at Manchester United finishing 7th and think that could be somewhat of...
it's a platform, isn't it?
A platform, a half decent place to start with. It all depends on what Ruben Amorim does. Again, apologies for the coffee machine or whatever in the background that's going off every 10 minutes. But yeah, I think that's somewhere where, as an underperformer, I don't know if I would quite stick by that now, just due to everything that's changed. I think Ruben Amorim is going to be a lot more critical of his own team, a lot more harsh on his own team, and make the right decisions. When a Bruno needs to be dropped, he will drop him. When actually, maybe he might not have Bruno, but whatever. When a out of form player, say like Garnacho, isn't playing up to the standard or is missing chances, maybe he won't play him. Though as I mentioned on the Wednesday's video, I do think the treatment of him has been a bit harsh by fans.
Yeah, definitely.
I would change now. I mean, it's a lot easier to say when you look at the table, but the underperformers probably have to be West Ham going forward, unless they do the same decision that United do and change manager possibly.
Yeah, do you know what? I didn't have West Ham because I felt like this was coming.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't really like the Lopetegui appointment. Every win,
I loved it.
Did you?
And I loved their window.
See, I feel like we get suckered in with West Ham every single summer transfer window. It's like they've won the window. They've made all these big signings.
I say every year. After at the end of the season, I remember me and Joe talking about this quite a bit actually. Sometimes behind the scenes of Football Daily, and talking about every year. I look at the transfer window and I think, oh my god, this is going to change a team. And normally, unless it's like like Cole Palmer for Chelsea, or I don't know, Isaac for Newcastle or whatever, normally it actually doesn't have that much of an impact or a huge impact. It can take a team a couple of places higher, it can take a team a couple of places lower, but actually normally it's not that big of a deal. The manager side though is huge, is absolutely ginormous. But again, I think when I remember sitting there, it was actually downstairs when we filmed it, and talking with Pat and Henry, and we were all saying, Pat and Henry had a massive argument over Fulkrig, and Henry was basically like, I don't think the deal's too bad for the short term. Pat said, for the long term, it's terrible. Kind of looks like Pat might have been right in the end. But ultimately, I still think Henry, what he was saying was fine. But we all agreed that we thought Lopetegui was a good manager, someone who actually could be a nice kind of way to go. Like, it wasn't like they were changing complete styles from, say, David Moyes. They kind of got someone who's almost like a more attacking kind of David Moyes, and he's not attacking at all, Lopetegui, but he's a little bit more than the David Moyes is.
It was almost like someone to sort of like hold their hand and just slowly take them in.
Exactly that. And someone who, like before, right, people always moaned that, when David Moyes was in charge, say the signings of a Somerville, of when they signed, say, a star striker in Sabala or whatever, they hadn't worked before under, say, a David Moyes, which is funny now when you look back at it, and actually, like, Kudos was pretty good under David Moyes. Bowen was pretty good under David Moyes. Paquetá was amazing under David Moyes. And so, like, maybe hindsight 2020, right? Like, it's so much easier to look back and go, actually, maybe people were a little bit wrong. I also do understand what people. I think to an element, it wasn't even that. It was like the football. Sometimes West Ham fans were watching. They found really tough, and even that, the Olympic Stadium, they've never quite gelled with that yet since leaving Upton Park. But right now, I would have said, based on what we said at the start of the season, West Ham are now my underperformer.
Yeah, I would probably say that as well. Although, I just didn't
if
really...
you backed it, then fair enough, man.
I just wasn't that sure about it. It just feels like I said, it feels like we kind of have this every summer with West Ham. But regardless of the window, obviously they brought in Kilman, they brought in Somerville, who I think in patches has looked pretty dangerous. The Fulkrig thing, I just
feel like I've seen Somerville play that much.
No, he scored against United, didn't he?
Yeah.
He's had some flashes, but again, I think he's been injured a little bit. Obviously, Kudus is banned now for the kind of foreseeable future after the Spurs game.
7 games, which is awful.
Yeah.
7?
I think it's 5.
Five,
Might be
sorry.
5. But still, I mean, 5 games
And
going,
two more.
coming. It's Benton
Yeah, it's a
got
lot.
7.
Oh, sorry, that's the one.
Yeah,
that's the
but
one.
again, kind of coming into this really tough period of the season. My underperformers were actually Aston Villa.
Interesting.
Because I just thought that, again, maybe it was a little bit too of a, not a basic way to look at it, but I just kind of, a little bit like Newcastle, I think we'd sort of seen the year before and sort of seen how much they struggled with Champions League football. And look, Villa were obviously in Europe the year before with the Conference League.
Yeah.
And actually, they didn't really rotate that much in the Conference League. So, again, that kind of side of things of like managing the squad, they kind of did that well the year before to get top 4. But
they've been pretty good in the Champions League.
They've been good in the Champions League. But I think the difference is that's kind of taken a toll maybe on the league games a little bit is the intensity of Champions League games. Like they work so hard in that Bayern game to win that game. Bologna was a little bit more straightforward, but again, a good, solid, hard-earned victory. Obviously, they lost to Club Brugge in the last game, beat Young Boys in the first one, and again, they've lost how many in a row in the league now? I think it's
they have currently
4?
lost two in a row in the league, but they have not won a game in 3.
That's it, and they lost in the cup as well, didn't they? To Crystal Palace, yeah. And again, maybe I think when obviously, I mean, Spurs lost last week to Ipswich, but the week before we beat Aston Villa quite convincingly that second half. And I think it showed that despite how well Emery sets them up and the balance of pragmatism and attacking football he gets right so often, I think there is a little bit of weakness there that nobody kind of really talks about in those more transitional games. Spurs absolutely killed them. As soon as we could make that game a little bit more basketball-like, we just took the game away from them. They couldn't cope with us. I don't know. It's an interesting one with Villa. I also think with Emery, he's kind of got so much credit in the bank with the media because of how, I think, harshly he was treated at Arsenal by everyone, really. I think everyone kind of looks up at Emery as this amazing coach, which he is. But I think if that was other managers that had kind of gone on the run they've gone, he would probably be getting a lot more criticism than he is now. And look, he's done amazing. This isn't to take anything away from Villa and Emery. I just thought that maybe But
what would underperformance be? Like, for instance, I think sometimes, like, with Villa, I think just because they finished the Champions League in top 4, shouldn't be then we judge them if they don't get top 4, they fail.
Oh yeah, if they finish 6th this season, for example, I don't think that's underperforming.
Yeah,
I could see them potentially. I could have seen them maybe finishing outside the European places. I just think because I think they'll go quite far in the not semi-final maybe, but I think they'll go quite deep in the Champions League, and I do think that will take.
Competition is tough as well this year by the looks of it. Like,
look at the top. We said it earlier. But
we
top
did say
10 is
earlier,
a joke. Like,
but there is a if say depending, because obviously there's the whole coefficient thing where we could get an extra Champions League place.
Yeah.
Which then means I think 8th would then also get
Conference
would then 8th would then get Conference League. So I think it would make sense from that side of it would feasibly mean they could finish 8th, or someone could finish 8th, still get into Europe and maybe consider that a good season.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean. I think the thing with Villa, it's interesting because they started the season, I thought, on absolute electric form.
Yeah, they were great.
That Arsenal game, which was obviously they lost 2-0 to.
Fine margins. They were very unlucky.
I remember, I was on the club for it. And was thinking like, oh my god, how they lost this game. Yeah, Ollie Watkins alone should have scored 2 goals.
Yeah, it was sort of the game that everyone stood up and took notice of Morgan Rogers as well. That game, wasn't it?
Morgan Rogers has been amazing this season. Obviously, deserves his call up to England. I do think, despite the pullouts of other players. We saw Raya make these unbelievable saves in those games to keep out Ollie Watkins. And like for instance, say they do win that game, say they draw that game, they suddenly jump from 9th into 7th. Into 7th, and then they're level with Chelsea, who are 3rd on 19 points, and suddenly like it's a little bit different. But I think you're right. Like this is the whole. I think you're right in the fact that there is an element where they could be underperforming, but again, it's all relative. I think to how the league is. Yeah. We could sit here and they could finish 8th, right, and say we don't get the coefficient, and they finish outside of Europe, But we could sit here and go, oh my God, there was 5 points between 8th and 3rd.
Yeah.
With the way how this season is shaping up so far. I mean, we're nearly 1/3 of the way through the league, and that's where this, from like 3rd down to 10th, is at the moment.
Yeah.
With how tight it is. There are going to be some more games coming up, like for instance, Villa are playing Chelsea, Spurs are playing Chelsea. Like those games will still like have a big impact.
They're kind of 6 pointers.
They are legitimately 6 pointers, huge 6 pointers. Same with a few other of these fixtures as well. I think Brighton have to play Forest still. Yeah. And so on and so forth. Like we've got Newcastle. Have you played Newcastle yet, Spurs?
Yes, earlier we lost. St James Park.
Oh yes, you did. Yeah, sorry to bring it up. But my point being, there are a lot of these games where we might then start to see the table kind of
take a bit more shape.
And also, it's relative to Aston Villa's season. Like, say they finish outside of Europe, but they go to the semi-finals of the Champions League.
Yeah.
They sit there and go, yeah, 100% we had a successful season.
This is the thing. I think people need to kind of, and again, I feel like I can speak from good experience of this being a Spurs fan, is that like that is important, even if they don't win anything this year. Yeah. If they were able to do that as a journey for those fans to get that far, I think they would sacrifice finishing top 6 to get to like a semi-final of the Champions League. Would be an amazing achievement. And again, that does really reflect well on Emery and how he's able to manage those kind of games. I also think that they play very differently.
They are playing slightly different now
in Europe compared to the Premier League, but also like I feel like they take some of the learnings from those Champions League games into the bigger Premier League games in terms of how they set up. I definitely noticed that when they played us. But again, I think there is a little bit of a kind of chink in the armour a little bit when those games become a little bit more open and transitional. I think it was a little bit harsh on reflection because I really like their squad, and I think the squad building that they have done over the last year or so, even before Emery got there, and then obviously accelerated when Emery came, and then when Monchi came in as well. Like the job they've done with that squad is fantastic. But I think I just saw the kind of intensity of the Champions League catching up with them a little bit. But we'll see.
It happens to the best of teams. It happens to the best of teams as well. It is difficult to, especially now in this Premier League where every team makes a game tough. It is difficult to expect every team to be fit and firing for all fixtures, and all it takes is one injury. All it takes is one injury. I think even Villa as well have been. I mentioned him as underperforming again on the video on Wednesday, but like Leon Bailey gave 19 goal contributions last season in the league. And this year he's got 2 assists, and so like having this person like drop off massively can be a huge impact. They don't have Diaby anymore as well, who's the other option for them on the wing, and he's not there now. Again, they've had the rise of Morgan Rogers. Other players replace different players. However, I definitely think you're kind of seeing them struggle sometimes with that going forward, and like when like Leon Bailey isn't on it, and they don't have someone like a Diaby to fall back on, it does make things a little bit more difficult. One thing I do want to mention quickly on the overachievers, Fulham and Bournemouth. I know we're going back right now quickly, but I think it's probably worth giving them some love here. We mentioned Forest, Fulham and Bournemouth, quite frankly, doing ridiculous things. I know Bournemouth are sitting just above Manchester United here, but this is a Bournemouth side who have made games ridiculously difficult for a lot of teams. They lost to Chelsea in the end, but they were unlucky maybe not to
last minute goal, wasn't it? It was
draw. They beat Man City in the end, which was an incredible result. They are a team who are so difficult to play against this season, and again in the Brentford game, 2-0 up to then lose 3-2. They've had a few things maybe go possibly against them. Though in the Brentford game, I actually thought they probably deserved to lose. But these teams have done very well. Even Fulham are above them. And I remember sitting here with Henry and being like, their transfer window... we weren't so sure. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a cough on at the moment. But we were like, Fulham transfer window, we weren't so sure about it. And in the end, I'll get on to one of their players maybe a little bit later about best signings. But they are so good.
Yeah. Do you think that transfer window thing was because of, obviously, like, kind of similar to Brentford in a way? Like, Brentford lost their talisman in Tony. Shabalini, not that he was a talisman, but like a very important player in that side.
Super important.
Do you think it was because you felt like they didn't really replace him in that way that you weren't convinced by the window? Because I feel
it was more the fact that we went last. Like, I didn't expect Raul Jimenez to have a
revival. No, I don't think anybody did. To be fair,
to the level that he has. I didn't think Henry loved the Emile Smith Rowe signing. And I understand why. My slight worry was we've not seen a fit Emile Smith Rowe for years. And we are seeing that at the moment. The issue is, say, what happens in
he could break down.
The fixture schedule gets a little more busier.
December is so tough for everybody.
They've kind of got to maybe wrap him in cotton wool to a degree, because he is so crucial. But Iwobi has been amazing this year. Absolutely fantastic this year. Adama Traore looks really, really good as well. Like, so many of these players have stepped up to the plate.
Reece Nelson as well.
Reece Nelson's been fantastic. Like, these guys have been really, really impressive. Whereas last year, like, goal scoring wise, it was like Muniz had like an unbelievable month or two. And that was kind of it.
Felt like a massive purple
now
patch,
they've got so many more cogs that are able to kind of help turn this Fulham machine going forward. Anderson's been fantastic at the back for them.
What a signing it was.
Kenny Tete has always been Mr. Consistent. Robinson has continued his incredible form. Like, you look back at this side now and you're like, oh my God, actually, like, this is what I mean, where sometimes maybe the transfer windows aren't as... And to be fair, when we did the video, we shot that with, I think, deadline day the next day or so, just due to how scheduling works. for me in time. And in the end, they pulled in a couple of, I think, didn't Reece Nelson join on deadline day?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
And things like this did help them. But overall, I just didn't see always always one of the critical issues with them was since they lost Mitrovic, who's the guy putting them in? They're so crucial for these teams to have good seasons. And it looks like Raul Jimenez is kind of performed back. But also just Emile Smith-Rowe. Emile Smith-Rowe is legitimately been incredible. I mean, I've actually got him down as maybe my change for one of the best signings in the window.
It's basically a goal or assist every other game, isn't it, for him at the moment?
He's a freak.
It's just been... And I think what's so great about Smith-Rowe is that it kind of does take the pressure off of the number 9 because he's so great at those kind of late runs as that sort of shadow striker running late into the box, getting on the end of crosses, and they've got brilliant delivery from out wide with the likes of Robinson, etc. He's just he's just there to just sweep those chances in on the edge of the box a lot of the time. And again, the goal that he scored on Saturday against Palace, it's came from there, high press, making the most of a mistake, capitalising on it, just goes through on goal, brilliant ball control, great finish. I said it in a video on Saturday after they beat Palace. It's I feel like Fulham have snatched Palace's chain of Vibes FC, of being that. Forest are a bit like it as well, obviously, but they're kind of they're just fun to watch, really exciting to watch. And it's just I think it helps the fact they've got Smith-Rowe, who I think is even as a Spurs fan, I think it's just it is great to see him playing regularly because
I agree.
It's just he's such a fantastic player, and genuinely
he's a little bit of an old school footballer. Genuinely, the way he is and the way he plays his football
just glides.
I think he's someone that wants the ball and wants to go past players, wants to have a bit of fun on the ball. And I think sometimes we're losing that a little bit,
definitely,
with certain footballers. I agree. You mentioned them there. Quickly back to underperforming. Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
I had them, and even though I didn't suggest them in the end for my underperforming, I went with my overachievers. I think I remember mentioning that Palace could have a really good year this year.
Yeah.
And I think, again, me and the boys spoke about it for a little bit. In the end, they're currently sitting in the relegation zone on 18th. I've seen a few Palace fans start talking about the actual possibility of relegation.
Yeah.
They're on 7 points. Again, they win a game, they do jump out of the relegation zone. We'll get more onto the relegation zone a little bit later, but more specifically about Palace and how their season is going. I didn't expect this. And weirdly enough, it's funny to look back now and kind of be like, what were you thinking? What were you, They lost Elise. They lost the guy who was incredible for them in attacking sense.
Genuinely a world-class player.
An unbelievable player. People have spoken about, he's obviously gone on to play very well for Bayern Munich so far. And he's exceptional. But I remember thinking, basically, the classic say, it doesn't work whenever... based on history over the last few years, when a player goes for big money and teams go, you know what we're going to try and do? We're going to spend it on a few different players to supplement them. It doesn't always work.
No.
I think back to Gareth Bale going at Spurs.
Literally, yeah. That's the prime example, isn't it?
One of them worked, Eriksen,
and in terms of longevity...
Did Dembele come in on that year?
No. It was Eriksen, Lamela, Soldado, Kirikez.
Yeah. 82 pace on FIFA back in the day.
Yeah. Who else was it? Capu, Chadley, and who was the other one? There was one more. I can't remember.
Not Livermore.
No. Who was it? Paulinho. The Brazilian midfielder. Yeah. Paulinho. Just no.
Anyway,
there was kind of two. Eriksen was amazing for us, and then Lamela, I think, for longevity was a good.
Yes.
Lamela was a good player, but
for instance,
very rarely works.
Didn't work. I'm trying to think of when obviously Tony went in the summer. Brentford actually didn't really bring in that many signings in the end. Other key players. Eden Hazard leaving Chelsea. Chelsea had a transfer ban, so they just used youth players and it ended up being pretty good. And I remember saying, I like the thinking. Jack Grealish at Villa. Yeah. Jack Grealish left, and they brought in a few different players, and it was a little bit like this for the first season, and then eventually kind of got a lot better, but that was more because of the Unai Emery effect.
It was like Danny Ings, wasn't it? And who else was it?
It was more due though to the Unai Emery effect why they got good, not necessarily because of them bringing in several different
100%.
players. But they were able to spend a bit of money on a few different acquisitions, of course, which has definitely helped them. However, Palace their season, I was like, okay, look, they're going, you know what, we can't buy a right winger out there who's going to absolutely replicate him, but we can get, and it's Marla Sarr, who I genuinely thought was like an okay signing.
Yeah, me too.
I remember Kamada, I remember thinking, it's very rare a free signing doesn't work.
Yeah, I know.
Didn't work for Brighton when they signed the German midfielder who's now back in the Bundesliga. Who Henry called. Oh, well, flipping out, his name's escaping me. But whatever. Anyway, it didn't work. It doesn't look like it's working with Kamada so far, but I think he's been a little bit unfortunate because the midfield's constantly changing. He's had to play several different positions. Like, I think that's an issue in itself that Adam Wharton's not been fit at all this season.
Yeah, he's just had surgery, isn't he? So it's
had surgery to hopefully get fit. Will Hughes, I just think, isn't the midfielder you trust. Like, you can play Will Hughes next to Wharton if needed.
Yeah.
Like, but he isn't the midfielder for you. And so then you're looking at, and then Nketiah just hasn't. I don't think he's been terrible, but it's not quite working.
No.
Because he's had the most shots in the league without scoring a goal, which isn't a good stat that you want to have attributed to your name. Mateta as well at the start of the season, at least for the first 6 or 7 games, was nowhere near the same form we'd seen. But
scored against Spurs though.
He did after an unbelievable Eze touch as well.
Yeah, Eze's another one as well. That's just like I kind of feel like Eze is a player that I've always. I think everybody, kind of like you were saying about Smith Rowe, like pure footballer. Everybody loves Eze, absolutely. And I think last year it was almost like Eze and Elise came as a pair, but I think you've definitely seen the kind of again, this might be a little bit harsh about Eze, but I think there is a kind of clear difference between those two as players. And I think Eze is maybe struggling a little bit with like the, not imposter syndrome, but like being the guy a little bit, I think, maybe.
I think sometimes though with like some of these players, it doesn't, there are certain players out there who are better when they're playing with better players.
Yeah.
Like when you can have someone like Elise, like when you're linking up with Elise, that makes your life 10 times easier.
Exactly, yeah.
Because also, like Palace are now coming up against defences who are now going, okay, the guy we mark is Eze.
Yeah, take Eze out of the game.
Previously, it was, well, if we mark Elise, then Eze's free, and then Eze can do something. But then if you mark Eze, well, Elise's free, and then Elise can do something.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't quite work out as well. Like part of the issue, last year, Elise wasn't fit for all of their games. And I think you did see a slight difference. They were still winning games, but it was still Eze. I think at least had the confidence of that he was playing really well that season.
Yeah.
I think you've seen him been hit this year.
Definitely,
he's like lost all of his confidence. I actually don't think I've seen some people criticise the defence of Palace. I actually don't think the defence is that bad.
I think
really
it's a really
don't.
good back three. Like I think Lacroix was at fault for the first goal on Saturday, but it's a misplaced pass.
Yeah.
These things can happen. Largely, he's been very good.
Yeah.
Chalobah's been good.
Gehi's always fantastic. I've seen a lot of criticism to Henderson, and
there was a lot on Saturday as well after the first goal.
Yeah, there was a lot against Forest as well after
that was bad,
after one of the goals they conceded, and so like it's funny. Sometimes goalkeepers do deserve criticism for making errors. However, that doesn't mean they've had a bad season.
No,
so far. And I actually think he's not that bad. I do. Like I do see a lot of Palace fans were like, we saw Forest got rid of them and they got better. Forest's goalkeepers after Henderson were not good.
No,
put it that way. For about a year, they signed 4, and it took them a while to find Sales. And only now Sales has come good. But they are, without a doubt, underperforming.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, had them into a decent place. So obviously for Joe's, when I had Joe's table here for when he was going to be here, he had Palace in 10th. He had West Ham in 9th.
I think bloody hell.
But yeah, he had Palace in 10th. And I think that was considered like that'd be a good season.
I had Palace up there as well. Like I always thought that they were going to lose Elise, which they obviously did. It never felt like they were going to lose Eze and Elise. And like I said, I think Eze at the start of the season I thought would be enough to kind of carry them through and kind of still carry on some of that momentum. But the reality is they have lost a world-class player. Yeah. Like, I think people are realising that now with how quickly he's taken to life at Bayern. The problem is with Palace as well is not just Elise. That whole right-hand side dynamic has completely changed. Munoz is not creative. Kamada, if he plays in that right-hand side in number 10, just hasn't been playing well for whatever reason. And again, like you said, he's kind of been shifted around in different positions. Sarr's not a creator. And Elise was that. He wasn't a winger, was he? He never played as a winger.
No,
you're
right.
They played 2 10s behind the striker. And they're kind of having to rethink now, do we play Nketiah and Mateta up top with Eze as that sole 10 behind them and just use the wing-backs to get up and down?
And Mitchell isn't an attacking wing-back by any means.
Neither's Munoz either, really. Yeah. Like, I think there's a real lack of quality in those wide areas for Palace, which is hurting them a lot. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be okay. But again, I don't know what their run of games are coming up. They've played... obviously they've played Spurs, they've played
Chelsea, they drew against
Chelsea.
They've had an interesting.
They've got Villa next, and then Newcastle, and then they've got City, Arsenal before Christmas as well. So it is tough for them. It is really tough. Hodgson back?
I think
not.
Yeah, I don't think they should sack Glasner. I think they sack Glasner might be
He's a good coach.
A poor decision, but they have gone from, I guess, a possible overachiever to an underperformer so far this season. Okay, let's quickly blast through a few different ones then. I might not have said this to one to you. I just want to give a quick shout out on the back to myself. Most improved, I said Brian Mbeumo.
Nice.
He's doing okay.
What a player.
He's doing okay. Best signing, I said Somerville.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think it's quite been that.
Yeah.
I had a few suggestions here. I actually think, I know we spoke maybe a little bit negatively about Aston Villa, but I think Onana's actually been really good for them in midfield.
He's unbelievable. The way he just chews up the ground is just like, I wasn't sure about that because I think Everton had been a little bit inconsistent. Spurs were linked with him a little bit as well, and I was a little, I mean, it sounds crazy to say now, but I was a little bit put off by it because I was just like, Spurs kind of need that six that's going to just chew up the grass and just cover that ground. And I was a little bit, Everton, he was a little bit inconsistent. I felt like it was almost like, well, I should be a better club. But it's kind of shown why he should be now. He's been great. Him and Tielemans is such an excellent partnership.
They're the perfect midfield, like genuinely. Like the one thing I think still with it, like, and it's definitely improving. But I've always said about Onana was his passing game needs to improve.
Yeah. Well, he's got Tielemans alongside him.
Exactly.
Just like, give it.
Literally.
I'll win the ball back.
And he's been incredible for them as well, just for like set pieces alone. Like he's such an aerial dominant.
Yeah, I think their first goal of the season was like inside 2 minutes at West Ham. He scored a header from a corner.
Yeah,
He's
he's like 6'4" or 6'5" or something. Like he's physically dominant. Like he just absolutely destroys some people.
Yeah.
But he's been a fantastic signing. It did cost a lot of money though. Like cost 60 mil or something like that. So
yeah. Those kind of sixes. I'm not sure if he's really a. Because he plays in a pivot.
He's a destroyer. I just call him like just a destroyer.
Yeah, but you get what you pay for, don't you? I mean, look at Caicedo, look at Rice.
Exactly. Though not all the time. Not all the time. Like a lot. There's been a few 100 million signings. Like Enzo Fernandez hasn't necessarily taken the world, right? Has he? We did the shoot before Pedro Neto had signed for Chelsea. He's only really just starting to come into his own light, but it's looking half decent. Milinkovic at Forest.
Yes, brilliant.
Been fantastic.
Partners Murillo so well. Like again, we spoke about
beautiful partnership. That
you spoke like Murillo is that ball playing centre back and stride out from the back. Milinkovic is a bit more of a kind of just traditional.
Did not cost him a lot of money.
No, great business. I think there's anything.
He'd always been linked to a few clubs. I remember United at one point, but United get linked to everyone. But him at one point being rumoured there, and like he's been a fantastic little pickup for them. Been absolutely superb. Ndai, Everton.
Yeah.
Fantastic signing so far.
I want to shout out Dom Solanke as well. I think Solanke, there was a lot of like...
I admit, I was one of them.
Yeah.
I was... And I'm not going to say I was necessarily wrong, but I don't... I think he's been fine.
Yeah. See, I think he's been... Again, I like looking at it through Spurs kind of tinted glasses, but he impresses me every single game. And do you know what? It would be an easier conversation to kind of talk about Solanke if Spurs had beat Ipswich and we were third and we'd be like, £65 million, how much it worked. But if you look at Spurs, and despite some of the poor results, he has genuinely been like quite transformative to our attack. He makes us so dangerous on the counter. He wins every duel pretty much. He's so silky on the ball, which is not something that I necessarily maybe appreciated about him at Bournemouth. He is an excellent presser. Like I saw a stat the other day that was like, this was before the Ipswich game, I think, that he had the most off-the-ball pressures out of any player in the Premier League by like 60. He was clear of the next person by 60, and he's missed 2 games with injury. He's just he's a joke. I actually went as far as to say, I've said it multiple times, I feel like we've replaced Harry Kane with Dom because it's. Look, you can never replace Harry Kane's legacy, and I've said this so many times, but in terms of having a striker up there that you just look on the team sheet and just don't worry about, you just look at him there, he's just there, and it's like he's part of the furniture. He does everything that Ange wants him to do really well. Could he have more of a box presence? Yes, I think so. Could he be a bit more clinical with his finishing? Yes, I think so. There was a chance, thankfully it didn't cost us.
Missed a few.
It was a one at United away where he went through 1-on-1. It was like, Kane buries that. One at Ipswich last weekend, it was like last minute of the game. We were terrible in that game, don't get me wrong, and deserved to lose it. But he had a real chance right at the end of the game where he could have got his head up and squared it to Son or just sort of snatched it a little bit. But in terms of his overall play, I think he's been excellent. Again, looking at it through Spurs tinted glasses, but I think he's I've taken to him really, really quickly. And again, we don't really get it right with big signings.
Yeah,
but I think we've definitely got it right with Solanke. He's been superb.
I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's bad. I just think if you're spending 60 odd million on a striker, he needs to be scoring more goals. I think
he has scored 6 goals. To be fair, all comps.
If at the end of the season he is like touching 20, in how much is in the league?
4. So he's got 4 in the league. He's missed 2 games. If he, I think, well, this is before the Ipswich game. I think he's basically got 1 in 2 in terms of starts. He got 19 goals for Bournemouth last year, so that's 1 in 2. I think the thing is with Solanke, if he gets 18, 19, 20 Premier League goals this season, but then allows Johnson to get 5 more.
Yeah, true.
Kulusevski, Son, because he makes us so dangerous on the counter-attack.
I think my biggest issue is I feel like you overpaid.
Probably.
That was probably, and that's probably what's on my head rather than the player himself. I think as the player himself, he's fine.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't say he's been the best signing of the summer.
No. I mean, the other one, I think, as I said, I had given it to Somerville, definitely changing this now. I think I'm probably going to give it to Emile Smith-Rowe.
Yeah.
I think for now, as long as he stays fit, maybe I'll do again an updated one and say like February, March. The other player I need to shout out, because this links into the next one of the worst signing, Liam Djellab.
Oh, amazing.
So Liam Djellab, again, I want to add a little bit of context. I did say was the worst signing in the Premier League. Not because I thought he was a bad player, but because they spent 20 odd million on someone who I thought was unproven. And I thought it was a massive risk.
It was a big risk.
I thought it was for someone to lead your line who hadn't necessarily been incredible at Hull City, had played a slightly different position as well, hadn't ever played or haven't really played in the Premier League before, hadn't scored a Premier League goal. You were putting a lot on his shoulders. I will happily hold my hands up here.
He's been amazing.
He is a great player.
Yeah.
Again, I did a video with John. He called him one of the top 10 best strikers in the league. I think it might have been a little bit. It might have been a little bit earlier. My issue with John was that he put him ahead of Jackson. That was the issue there. But he has made me look a fool. And I'm more than happy to admit it. He's got so many assets to his game, and it's really impressive. It's funny when you look at him. I don't know why. I always think he looks small. He's a unit.
I've
physical beast.
Again, there's kind of the recency, not bias coming into it, but obviously we lost to Ipswich at the weekend. That is one of the best centre-forward performances I've seen from a relegation-threatened side coming to Tottenham, and he just
links the attack on all elements. He is so
works
good.
so hard. Obviously, the goal was scrappy, but still chipping in with goals.
For it, though. That's
exactly.
The thing. Especially when you're at one of those sides, you almost need at times a strike. I mean, every side can do it, but in the relegation, if you're in a relegation battle, which I think is fair enough to say Ipswich will be, you need a striker that is doing that stuff. Look at Southampton; they don't have that at all.
No. He pressed us really well. Him and Hutchinson Hutchinson's another one to kind of shout out as well. He's been brilliant. But again, they signed the best player in the Championship, pretty much. Best player in the Championship, one of the best players in the Championship. But Djellab,
it was amazing for them last season. Again, it was one of the guaranteed.
For me, I think we spoke about this when we did the
we had Ben. We had other Ben here as well.
It was we spoke about the fact that it's that continuity from bringing players that have also gone up with you. I think is really important. But with Djellab, again, sometimes people will kind of talk about Christian Romero and say that they don't really rate him or whatever. One thing that Christian Romero rarely gets is bullied in duels. Djellab was he was a monster all over him. He was excellent on Sunday.
Is it him that when Dragson has the header and kind of screws it up? Is that Liam Djellab on him?
I think so. With the Smodics bicycle, I think so. Yeah, he's been great. Hutchinson's been great as well. He was such a threat for them on the break the other day. My best signing, although I was talking about Solanke, the player that I actually went with, and I said this in the video that we did before, was actually Savinho. Because I was kind of thinking about impact and pride. Again,
I think he has been pretty good.
He's been great, when he's been fit. That first half against Brighton, he was he's so fun to watch, and I think it was just
it was a different kind of wing, wasn't he, to what we'd expected. But then he's more like the Doku kind of element.
I was kind of thinking with Savinho, it was impact versus price. Yeah. But again, it's quite easy for an attacker to go in and look good in that
very
City
Mahrez-ish, side. Isn't he?
It's literally the same number, left-footed. Yeah. Watch it genuinely watching him in the cup against Spurs. You can't help but even though he's on the opposition, you can't help your eyes kind of draw to him as a sort of that kind of player. Would I stick with Savinho? Probably not. I think Liam Djellab is a great shout because again, it's just like that differential of that might keep them up. How many goals he scored? Like 6 Premier League goals.
I don't know the exact number, but it's
5 or 6, which is
it's really crucial. Like I think he's just really. But even like we talk about him being physically dominant, but he's also great on the ball, can drive with it really well. I think he makes smart decisions in picking which passes he has to make.
Yeah.
And he is also willing to go, you know what, like I back myself from 30 yards here. He saw that screamer a couple of weeks ago and putting it into the top bins. And like, I think you're looking at a striker here who's really, really interesting. I would love to know what would happen if, say, he, the next level, if he ever took that to go to a club that might be competing for a European place or whatever it might be. But he has been super impressive, and I'm glad to say, I'm more than happy to say, like I was completely wrong.
Yeah.
I do back my like reasons why, like with the context of just thinking it was so risky. But some of the most risky transfers are the ones that pay off. And can really like help you out here. And I think Ipswich have done a very, very good job with him.
Yeah, I did a video with John as well. I was on the Ripple Effect with James Alcott and John as well, and we kind of did 2 truths and a lie. And one of
John has like fallen into this, by the way.
100%.
Luckily.
And he said, what did he say? I think he said, I actually can't remember whether it was the lie now or not, but he said that Liam Djellab will be England's striker at the World Cup in 2026. I can't actually remember whether it was the lie. Someone get the tapes.
Oh, John.
But to be fair, I can't see it, but he's backed him, hasn't he? Yeah, it's
Harry Kane. What we might see, though, like there was a period, I remember speaking post-Euros about what is the strategy after Kane.
Yeah.
And we were kind of saying, like, look, we've seen other countries put Alvaro Morata up top for Spain.
Yeah.
And him being like, this is Morata is actually a good footballer.
Yeah.
But it's not, say, like the star player like Harry Kane is for us. And Djellab, there is every possibility. It could be Dom Solanke, it could be Watkins.
Yeah.
But for the future, like Djellab's got a very good shout for 100%. Right now.
Because this is the thing with the English strikers. It's like, well, Tony's obviously out of the picture now. But when you look at Watkins, so Solanke's just turned 27. Watkins is 28, turning 29, I think. It's not like there is the 24-year-old, 25-year-old that's banging in goals. I mean, again, like if you're looking at Solanke, he's got longevity there. He looks after himself really well. Same as Watkins.
5 or 6 years left.
And, I mean, look at Kane as well. Like you could easily make the argument that he's the striker in the next Euros for England. Maybe it might be a stretch, but the way he looks after himself, and again, he had a bit of a pop at some of the England players yesterday, didn't he?
I saw, yeah.
And he's like, but I kind of get where he's coming from in a way because he's the guy that always turns up, doesn't he? Like he always is there, but again, the injuries and all the stuff like that. But Djellab's great. Djellab is great.
He is fantastic. Whether he will start for the England front line,
maybe
if there's injuries, you never know.
It's a bold shout.
But, it is a bold shout. If it was the lie, I hope it was the lie. John. Okay, so that was our. So I guess what was your worst signing? Did you have that?
Well, on the video that we did together, I said Pedro Neto just because I think I was still a little bit hurt from the fact that literally like 2 days before it looked like he was going to join Spurs and then went to Chelsea. I have got another Chelsea one, and I just think it's not because it's like I don't dislike him as a player. I just think it was pointless, and that was Dewsbury Hall. But then again, maybe that's just an easy answer, and there's probably been some ones that haven't worked out more than that. But it just didn't make sense.
It is true. Like I think you're right. As I said, I'd probably change mine to Dewsbury Hall now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's mad because I was very fortunate enough to go into pre-season with Chelsea, and like I saw it was almost like Dewsbury Hall just knew way before everyone else what he was doing because he'd done it for a year.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that I've not seen him play more minutes. Like he cares so much. Like you see it. Like he knows. Like he's obviously at a much better club than he maybe would have expected to have got to.
Yeah.
Or than it was at Leicester, obviously. And he wants it to go well, and he wants to fight for his place, and he wants to. I think he's got all the attributes. Like I think he's doing everything right. And even in the Conference League, when he has been given his minutes, he's played really well.
Yeah.
Or especially in more recent games. Again, it's tough to kind of compare that when you're playing against some of these oppositions who, the Armenian side, who are like who are like 7th in the league. No disrespect, but it is tough to. You look at that Leicester side, you see them kind of struggling at times, and you think like, this was we took their player of the year.
Yeah.
And Chelsea spent 30-odd million on him. It wasn't like he was super cheap or anything like that. And so I think literally in terms of in terms of the actual like statement worth signing, it probably has to be that because he's not had an impact.
No, very, very little impact. I kind of feel sorry. I do feel sorry for him in that sense. I also think like again,
I don't feel sorry in the fact that like I think he's over the moon.
Oh God, yeah.
Like in terms of playing for Chelsea, I think he's over the moon.
Yeah, for sure. I think again, like you said earlier, hindsight's 20/20. Because I think I actually remember saying about Dewsbury Hall at the time is like I'm saying now that it doesn't make sense, and in hindsight, it obviously doesn't make sense. But when Maresca was coming in, it felt like there was a lot of maybe skepticism around that appointment. It was almost like I need a guy who's been there before. Do you know what I mean? It's like a not. Yes, man is the wrong phrase, but just like someone, it is really important to, again, like we were talking about with Ipswich, bringing those players that had come up with you, you know, having that kind of continuity for a new manager that's going into a big club like that is quite important, I think. And I don't think that was the sole reason that he was signed. But again, because of the tactical side of thing, he knows how to play Maresca's system. But obviously, the reality is that Chelsea have got a lot better players that are in front of him in the queue, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's what it is. Like.
Exactly. And you got to remember as well, right? Like I think there's an element probably where Chelsea think, you know what, if there's a worst case scenario again, where Enzo Fernandez is injured, Lavia is injured, who do we turn to? In this midfield, and they go, you know what? At least let's get someone who, without a doubt, knows what his job would be in that midfield for these situations, 100%. And then it's a Dewsbury Hall, and then maybe we sit here, say you don't wish injury on anyone or hope that happens, but say that scenario was to play out, you might sit here and go, oh well, God, look at like Dewsbury Hall seems like he knows what he's doing or whatever. But however, that's a situation that's could happen, maybe not. It might not ever happen. So we'll see. Won't waste too much time talking about it. Okay, then let's go back through the table then and finish off with our actual predictions of where everybody is finishing. We won't go exactly 1 to 20. However, your winners. I said Man City.
I said Man City as well. But
would you like to stick by that?
I'm going to twist, and I'm going to go with Liverpool.
We should talk about it. We've already spoke about Liverpool.
Yeah.
We should give them a little bit of a chat for sure. Arne Slott's done an incredible job.
Yep.
They are now playing teams which are tougher, and they are doing a very good job.
Yep.
He has made Ryan Gravenberch look incredible.
Best midfielder in the league this season,
looks
isn't he, really?
Absolutely incredible in this sixth role. I think Trent's just got injured, which is going to be an interesting scenario. Possibly. I think he's only out for a couple of weeks anyway, but it could be. It couldn't be. It might not be something that's like really, really bad. But this Liverpool side, I had them in my top 4.
Same.
Last season, for my predictions. But they have. I just thought. And I think a lot of people thought this. When you lose, and we've seen it over the years of losing such a cult figure like Jurgen Klopp. When you lose someone like that, you think, okay, this is it then. Like, there's going to be a huge rebound here. Like, things are changing in this club. No one quite knows what they're doing. But one of the best things they did was bring back Michael Edwards.
Yeah,
who has kept at least the behind the scenes very similar. They didn't lose, they may not have the best transfer in the world and bring anybody in, but actually that might have been to their benefit.
Yeah.
Because they've been able to keep the core squad still there. They know what they're doing. He hasn't necessarily changed loads from what Jurgen Klopp was doing as well.
Not particularly.
So they are playing in a consistent way that they already know how to do. I think he's just been really smart. I think he's been good with the media. I think he's been good with the fans. It's not like he's then tried to copy how Jurgen Klopp would be absolutely going for it.
This is one of the points I was going to say.
Smart.
I think that's one of the things that's benefited him most. He's not tried to be Klopp.
Yeah.
He's doing his own thing, kind of going under the radar. Obviously Liverpool aren't going under the radar now, but in terms of his personality, his personality has come through and shone through definitely. Quite got sort of that. And again, you look at a manager that's come from the Dutch league and you look at Ten Hag and the difference in... everybody's different in terms of their personality, but the charisma that Slott's got compared to someone like Ten Hag has obviously benefited him massively. The fans have taken to him just like that. I think I said... And again, they didn't have the toughest start to the season. I think I said from the second game where they beat Brentford, I was like, this Liverpool team could win the title. There's just something about them where it was they're pragmatic enough defensively, they're solid. That centre-back partnership is the best in the world, by the way. Canate and Van Dijk. They've been amazing.
Kanate's been amazing. Van Dijk, obviously.
And then Gravenberch, I don't think anybody foresaw that. Look, I don't think there was anything wrong with predicting them in the top 4 or anything like that, because I predicted them to finish 3rd. I thought they'd have a good transition year where they maybe pick up a cup and build for next year. Obviously, the problem they've got to sort out is the contract situation, but again, that's not really relevant to where they're going to finish this year. But I think I could not understand why people were predicting them to finish it just felt like I want to be the different person and go nah, it's going to all fall apart. Look at what happened with Man United when Fergie left. But the reality is Liverpool got a much better squad than what happened with United and Fergie, really. But they've been really impressive. I think they'll win it. I do think they'll win it.
Do I want to change from City?
I just think City without Rodri, and I know it's easy to say, but look at how they've been getting killed on transition in these games. Yeah. Pep will find a solution, but will it be enough of a solution to the big test? Liverpool versus Man City at Anfield in 2 weeks' time on Sunday 4:30 under those lights. It's going to be
that's huge. That's
so
really
big.
That is a huge 6-pointer. I mean, look, I think what they've benefited from, not to take credit away from Liverpool, I think they've done their job fantastically well.
Yeah.
I think what they have benefited from is Arsenal aren't quite at the level they were or at the races. Again, Arsenal had injuries, that's why, or a big contribution to that. Man City also, as you mentioned, but again, injuries. And whereas Liverpool haven't.
No.
They've just picked up Trent's injury, who's out for a couple of weeks, by the looks of it. They've not lost but I mean, Salah never gets injured anyway. No.
He's been amazing as well.
Jota, who started the season well, is injured, but they've kind of been used to this already.
Yeah,
Nunes,
they've got Gakpo, they've got Nunes.
And Nunes actually seems to have kind of taken. Whilst I still think he's the same Nunes, it at least looks like he's playing a bit more with confidence again.
There's less pressure on him, I think, now as well, because he's been there a while now. The
price
tag
kind
thing
of
isn't
gone.
Exactly.
He's got Diaz. We should mention Diaz. He's got Diaz on incredible form, ripping things up at the moment. And so my point more so was going to be, based on history, I feel like it would be a silly decision to write City off.
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely.
And again, that game is big because say they win that, say they both win their first game after the break, and then they've got this game, and Liverpool win that, they then go 8 points ahead, which does start to build the gap. But we're talking about one of, if not the best managers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think it would be remiss to think he couldn't figure out the solution.
Oh, 100%.
And if, right now while we're recording this, and probably between the international break and everything, he is sitting there and going, what do we do?
Yeah.
And thinking, how do we get this done? And so I'm gonna stick with Man City as my winners. And I will be happily proven wrong if Liverpool go on to do it. And they would definitely deserve to do so because they've done unbelievably well. I will change my top 4 though.
Same.
So previously it was Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs. I will change it to be Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea.
Yeah.
I'd like to mention, when we recorded that predictions video, I went onto that day, and it doesn't really mean anything because I backed out of it, but I went into that shoot thinking, I'm going to put Chelsea top 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Chelsea top 4, and I chickened out because Pat and Henry were so negative about Chelsea. I was like, oh, can I do this?
I fight against
Is it going to cause another uproar about Chelsea? Can I be bothered for that argument? And I didn't do it. And look, I know it's all hearsay. I could be lying. But I think I put Chelsea 6th in the end for it and had an argument that 6th would be a good finish. Anyway, I like what I'm seeing from Maresca.
Yeah.
I think he's done. We haven't really spoken too much about Chelsea, but I think he's done a very good job. I still think there are, whilst I think Ange is great, and I think Spurs would be so stupid to get rid of him, I do think there is a bit of inconsistency there. I do think you are an injury away from, Van der Ven's out.
Yep.
Things get shaky at the back. I think Udogie isn't anywhere near the form he was last season.
Nope.
If a Maddison gets another injury again, your creativity drops.
Yeah.
Johnson suddenly comes out the side or drops the form that he's at. Things drop.
We're very thin. We're thin on the ground. That's the reality of it. And I think that I was really positive about the summer because I think we did so much work kind of gutting the squad and gutting the players that Ange didn't want and didn't think he could play or could play his way. And I really liked all the players that were brought in. Obviously, you talked about Solanke earlier. That look to the future with Bergvall and Gray, which is obviously Bergvall wasn't bought in the summer.
I called Bergvall my breakeout star.
He was my young player of the season.
Yeah, he's not featured enough.
Yeah, and he's not looked. In pre-season, he was great. Pre-season is a complete different intensity. He's been. Look, I think out of any of the youngsters that we bought, I think Archie Gray has proved himself to kind of be.
He's fantastic.
He's been brilliant. He's struggled at times, but he's also a victim probably of his own versatility. He's not played in midfield yet. Bentancur's ban. Basuma, there's a lot of pressure on him, but now that might give an opportunity for Gray to play in there a bit more, which is great. I just think with Chelsea have got a bigger squad than us. Like you said, a few injuries to Spurs, and I think things could start. Johnson is obviously a little bit inconsistent in terms of his actual performance, but I think we'd struggle to replace it. Odebear's injured.
A player gets injured at Chelsea now, there's a replacement there.
Yeah,
or
with
a player
Spurs,
gets
that's not
out
the
of
case.
form, there's a replacement there.
Yeah, if Solanke was to get injured for Spurs, that is a disaster going into this run because it's like Richarlison's not fit.
Who's the
Richarlison's
academy kid?
Will
He got sent
Lancashire.
off? Yeah.
Will Lancashire. Will Lancashire's great. I think he. But again, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
There was. I think Solanke went down injured in that first half on Saturday when it was 0-0, and it was like, or maybe it was a 1-0, and it was like Lancashire was warming up, but it was like Werner was going to come on and Son was going to go through the middle.
Yeah.
So it was obviously Solanke got through the game in the end and went away with England, so he's fine. But yeah, I would change that. Mine was not quite exactly the same as you. Mine was what I want to do now is Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, but it was City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs.
So you're saying Spurs?
Chelsea for Spurs, yeah.
Where do Spurs go? Because I put Chelsea sixth on them.
I think fifth or sixth. I think for Spurs.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting shout as well, about I think Brighton could genuinely be up there fighting around there. I do think, I'm sorry, Forest fans, I do think there will be a drop off.
Yeah, there will be.
And I, again, would love to be proven wrong. Villa is going to be an interesting one on how they continue. Newcastle, I genuinely think are about to start kind of going up the table again. Fulham,
Man United.
Whereas I feel like with Forest, I feel like they're going to drop off. I feel Fulham are at a good consistent rate.
Yeah.
I genuinely feel like they're at a consistent rate. So I don't quite know maybe what it is, but I just think maybe it's just due to the history of the last season and stuff. But yeah, I do think that was I do think Chelsea will get in the top four.
Yeah, I probably agree.
They also they do need to genuinely the squad. Like money, financially, I think it's worrying if Chelsea don't get into the top four.
Yeah, I think
to be
that's
honest. But we'll see what happens there. Okay, relegation.
I've had a bit of a mare here, I think.
I said Southampton, Leicester City.
Yeah.
Not too bad. I'd probably stand by two of them.
Yeah, I stand by. I had exactly the same.
Nottingham Forest.
I had Brentford. I'm sorry, I just want to apologise to Thomas Frank and Brentford. I think I just got too caught up in the losing Tony.
Yeah.
But Wissa and Mbuemo, Damsgaard's really come into form as
He
well
has
this year. Someone that
Damsgaard,
wasn't really effective over the last couple of years, obviously hampered by injuries, etc. They are great. Yeah. They just are great, Brentford. There's no place you probably wouldn't want to... Well, obviously, maybe not, but the G-Tech Community Stadium at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. It's where the goals are at. And it's like you were saying about Bournemouth earlier, about the fact that Villa have obviously dropped points to them. Arsenal and City both lost at Bournemouth. Not many teams are going to go to Brentford and win. Their home record is great. So that was a stinker from me. I just thought Igor Thiago coming in for Tony. I was just I don't know.
Well, he's not even played.
No.
He's been injured the whole season.
But again, this is a massive credit to Thomas Frank as a coach because he's found a way. He's just and look,
I don't even think they've been that good defensively. I think
they're still letting in quite a lot of goals.
Exactly, yeah.
There's 3-2s, 4-3s, 5-3s. It's like that, isn't it?
His attack, which I think you're right. Everyone did think, oh god, now Tony's gone. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, Mbuemo's really taken. Mbuemo got injured really early last season. It affected him.
Yeah.
It looks like this year he's the guy, and whether he'll be there next year is another question. But who? Okay, so who would you swap then? So would you keep Southampton and Leicester in there?
Yeah, definitely. I think Ipswich will stay up. And I said that at the start of the season. I think they will stay up.
Ipswich will stay up.
I think...
But I don't think Wolves will go down. I don't think Palace will go down.
This is that is so tough. That is it's really, really tough.
Maybe it's easier to just say Ipswich will go down.
I think it is, but I'm going to...
Wolves, I know Wolves only won one game, but I do think they're better. I think they've got better in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that win was massive for them on Saturday against Southampton. They've also got game changers, I think, Wolves a little bit. Cunha is great, I think. I think Strand Larsen's kind of hit the ground running a little bit.
Larsen's amazing.
Yeah, he's been really good. I think it's so hard because it's then we're living in a world where it is it's Palace or...
Oh my god!
This is impossible. I think
can't be West Ham.
It won't be West Ham. It can't be West Ham. It's not going to be Brentford. Not going to be Bournemouth. But I think Ipswich will. I'm going to say Wolves, but I'm not sure I believe it. But I think it's better to be honest than because I think Ipswich.
I think look, it's super difficult down there, but I agree. There's something about Ipswich where I think they could do something.
Yeah, I agree.
They've got players there that can really affect a game and make a huge impact. We spoke about Hutchinson. We spoke about Djellab.